URC round number 4, folks. Glasgow heading away to the Ospreys, and it is the Glasgow lads who get themselves a pretty emphatic bonus point win in the rain at the Brewery Field. I much prefer that field compared to the Swansea Stadium for the Ospreys, guys. That stadium was clearly too big. There's a much better atmosphere here, even despite the team going down 42-17. The fans, for large periods of the game, were still in pretty good voice. But yeah, it was competitive first half. Not so much in the second. We'll go through some of the key events and whatnot of the game. The stats are broken for this one. I don't know what they did wrong. But the stats keepers mucked up somehow. So the stats stopped updating after about 15 minutes. And then they couldn't correct them in time. So sadly, I don't have any stats, but I would hazard a guess that the possession and territory numbers, particularly in the second half, were not pretty reading for the Ospreys because Glasgow were just putting them under the pump. We had a weird start to this game. Andrea Piatti was the ref, as if that guy doesn't get enough spotlight put upon him. I don't know that I've ever seen like a penalty try and yellow card reversed where the guy who's supposed to have left the field gets to come back on. But we saw that in this game, reverse the try. Bring him back because there were several Glasgow infringements, scrum and maul. Ends up with a yellow card. I think it was Rowe. Kyle Rowe got yellow carded for Glasgow and it was a penalty try. They put the 7 points on the board for the Ospreys, but then the TMO got on the blower and said, nope, there's an obstruction in there from the Ospreys, so bring him back. I don't know that Kyle Rowe actually left the field, but bring him back, take the points away. The decision was reversed, so back to 0-0, and then Glasgow up the other end, line-out move like 2 phases, and Jamie Doby, who gets man of the match, he has a wee snipe, 7 points to 0. That's a pretty brutal one. For the Ospreys to think you've scored down one end and then a couple of minutes later being under your own sticks, although they did score a very similar try through Ruben Morgan-Williams, and I think they needed more Morgans in this game because you got Luke Morgan and Ruben Morgan-Williams. They needed Jack Morgan and as many Morgans as they could get, did the Ospreys guys, to get more tries. Apparently no Jack Morgan for this one, which was unfortunate, but yeah, their try was pretty similar. Glasgow offside, Ospreys maul phases, and then Ruben Morgan-Williams with the snipe into some space. So the couple of halfbacks getting on the board, 7 points apiece. But Glasgow's second one through Kyle Steyn is maybe my favourite one of the game because I love seeing them shifted through the hands. It starts with an Ospreys knock-on. They get the knock-on advantage, do the Glasgow guys. They're able to shift it all the way from the right edge of the field through the hands left, and then it ends up back on the right with Kyle Steyn finishing it off. It is some pretty sweet play, especially given the conditions from Glasgow. So they're 14 points to 7, and some of the kicking in this game from the tee was immaculate given the rain and the wind. I don't know that enough credit was given to these guys, Adam Hastings and Dan Edwards and whatnot for their kicking, but 14 points to 7. Dan Edwards did get the reward for a bit of Ospreys pressure in return with a penalty to make it 14-10. So back to, very close scoreline. But then there was a yellow card for the Ospreys, which didn't help their cause. Dewey Lake, it's a tackle on Walker. It's a bit of an unfortunate one because Walker's kind of bent and there's a bit of a change of direction. But Dewey Lake, I think he starts bent as well, but just kind of rises up into the tackle at the last second, which doesn't make it look good. So he ends up getting a yellow card, which gets reviewed and does end up staying yellow, which I think is probably a fair result, all things considered. But credit to the Ospreys, during the yellow card, no points conceded. The Glasgow guys will be really frustrated. Like, Glasgow charged Morgan Williams down at one point when they were trying to exit, and Dan Edwards had to scramble and hoof the thing clear. There was good reactions from him. And there was a heap of goal line defensive phases from the Ospreys guys as the Glasgow guys couldn't crack them. I was a little bit frustrated that Glasgow weren't really employing any width, which had got them the Kyle Steyn try, which was a thing of beauty. I guess they're so close to the goal line, they just felt like, let's just keep trucking it up. We'll get a try eventually, but no, they did not. However, once the Ospreys guys went back to 15, Dewey Lake comes back on. Glasgow finally did get it from the maul. Ospreys probably did well to avoid a yellow card because they were on a warning at that point from Piatti. So 21 points to 10 at halftime. I don't know what the stats were because the stats, sadly, were broken. Start of the second half, the Ospreys get a much-needed score. Moriarty, a couple of carries, gets himself over the advantage line as well. And then they shift it left through the hands. Luke Morgan, he goes over. What is he like? He's not my age yet, but he's in his 30s, old Luke Morgan. So 21 points to 17. That's back to game on, but that's the final scoring for the Ospreys. Unfortunately for them, they don't have, I don't have the stats, but they don't have much ball. Glasgow really, really turned the screws on them. They get the bonus point. You can't give Jamie Dobie any space. He gets himself into acres of space by his standards. It's 28 points to 17 when he scores. He chases a kick not long later and could have potentially had a hat-trick, but there's Cassende and someone else tracking back, so he can't quite get it, old Jamie Dobie, but he still gets man of the match, like I said. Adam Hastings kicked a cracking 50-22, which doesn't come to anything, but it was highlight worthy in itself. You probably won't see it in the highlights, but it was a hell of a kick if you appreciate a nice kick. And then 61 minutes, it is game over. Ewan Ferry finishes it. Nice hands from Glasgow onto the left wing, and it really starts with the Glasgow win penalty at scrum time. So 35 points to 17. You can't see the Ospreys coming back from there. They basically spend the vast majority of the second half defending. It did look like they had scored another one, Glasgow, but it got pinged for a croc roll in the build-up, which I think was a fair call, but they did get the last one through the maul anyway to make it 42-17, which is a bit of a hiding in the end. As I said, I would love to look at the stats. They might correct them in the next couple of days, but for now, immediately after the match, we don't have them. Glasgow will next face the Bulls, which should be an interesting game. And then the Ospreys will be up against Welsh opposition in the Dragons. I wish I'd watched the Munster and Leinster game, which I haven't seen yet. So I'm going to avoid all spoilers because I don't know the result for that one. That one was on at 5:15 in the morning, and I chose to sleep. But I did watch this one. First half was a proper ding-dong battle, but as I said, second half, Glasgow just too good. You guys let us know your thoughts. We'll do a full URC round wrap-up probably tomorrow. But yeah, you guys take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you again soon. Ta-ra.